This is the day the Lord has made. Well, he has made.
And aren't we glad? This is wonderful. As I was laying in bed this morning and reflecting on this last week, I looked out the window and saw the most beautiful, kind of a salmon colored clouds reflecting the light that was coming to it. And I thought, every day is beautiful and every moment is special. And today is all there is. You know, yesterday's gone and we don't have to worry about tomorrow. And we just get to be in the moment with all of us who have chosen to be here. And I want to thank all of you who have taken time on this warm day, shall I say, to find a cool spot and to be here together so that we can be united in spirit, encourage one another as we go through this next week to be our best. So thank you for being here. I think you all know the drill about how to find the word and how to find our website and all of that. And of course, we all know that Jackie's ready and able to serve us as our chaplain. And we're so thankful. And we have Phil here today, and I got to chat with him a little bit before the service actually started. So I'm all jazzed up. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, where do we go from here? So I've already introduced you. I'm just going to go right into the word because it's so good. And it reminded me this morning when I saw that beautiful color in the sky. It wasn't the sky, it was the color that was being reflected, much like the rainbow that's on Phil's background. If you notice his little square, it feels like Hollywood Squares here when I look at all of you. And behind Phil, he has a rainbow, and that's what we see. So today's word is reflection. I reflect the brilliant light of God. God, the one presence and power, just like we say when we do our affirmations in the universe, is expressing through all people, all of you, the natural world, and all other aspects of life. If I ever doubt the presence of God, I need only behold the world around me. The light of God is being reflected in the kind words and acts of people, in the beauty and magnificence of nature, and in life's grand rhythms and minuscule movements. I too reflect the brilliance of God, even when I don't feel like it. My ideas, dreams, and all I do to make my mark on the world are just some of the ways the divine expresses uniquely as me and as each of you. Living from my divinity, I bring more of God's light into the world. And this is so fun because Phil and I were just singing earlier about this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And we all get to do that in whatever worlds we touch. And from the book of Corinthians in the New Testament, the 3rd chapter and the 18th verse, I read, and all of us, seeing the glory of the Lord, as though reflected in a mirror, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. And I have to tell you a little story here. I was in Mexico last week, and I've been trying to affirm what Louise Hay says, that we need to look in the mirror and see the glory of God in each of us, right? And so I practice and I say, I love you, Esther. And it's a little hard at first to look in the mirror and say that, but I try to do it. Well, I got pretty good at doing it to where I could actually say, I love you and love all of me just as I am. But then I went to Mexico and I happened to go to this women's center where clothing was optional for the women. And I met two beautiful young specimens. And I thought, I need to go back and revisit the mirror and practice some more. So it's easy to be our own worst critic, isn't it? But you know what? We are all here manifesting God in our own special ways. So own what you know to be true. And I hope that this reflection speaks to you as much as it did to me. And from that, we can just go into our affirmations. And yes, I know there's a lot of buzz going on out in the world, but you know what? We know that in terms of what we acknowledge and what we bring into our life is that there is only one power and one presence and one love active in our lives today. You want to join me with that? There is only one presence, one power, and one love active in my life. God, the good, omnipotent. And we go on to say there is only one presence, one power, and one love in this wonderful ministry. God, the good, omnipotent. And then there is only one presence, one power, and one love active in the world today. God, the good, omnipotent. And this is so exciting to me because sometimes I see things and I put my little judgment hat on and I think, well, things aren't so wonderful. But when we see the bigger picture, we know that all is in order and we're in our place and there is no unorderedness in the universe today. So claim that and focus on that because what we think about, we bring about, and we know that to be true. Well, I want to just jump into our next song, which is The Greatest Thing in All the World, and it's on page 241. So if you have your hymnal, please turn to there, and Eric will beam up that song. Thank you, Eric, for playing that beautiful music. And if by chance you don't have the hymnal in your possession, you can certainly write to us at capitalcityorg.org and request one or pick one up when you come to the next service. But the words, if you want to know them today, is the greatest thing in all my life is knowing you, loving you, and serving you. What else is there? That is so beautiful. I don't have too many announcements today. We will proceed next week with being together. So if you like hugs, make the effort to come. We give hugs every Sunday. And I believe next Sunday is Carolyn Oramundi will be with us with Claudia as her platform assistant. If I'm incorrect, check out the email this week and you'll be up to date on what's going on there. And when you do come in person, you get to pick up special things like I did recently. This is a little booklet and these are free. And I was reading this morning about how Myrtle Fillmore found her health. And that's a beautiful story in there. And certainly our faith does make us well, doesn't it? Oh, so let's go to the next wonderful song, which I think is a wonderful one for today, is Coming to the Garden on page 89. Oh, isn't that beautiful? It's so real, isn't it? He walks with us and he talks with us and he lets us know we're all connected. We are his own. I love that song. And you know, when I chose the pre-meditation song for this week, it's one of my old favorites. It's Sweet Hour of Prayer. And I got to thinking about our service, and it's usually about an hour long. And we have an opportunity once a week to come together for this sweet hour of prayer. So I again thank all of you for joining us in spirit and in visual face, if you're putting your face on this Zoom call, that this is a special, special time out of the week to take a special hour to be together. So Eric, you want to play that song before the meditation?
And
Oh, thank you. That was supposed to be a pre-meditation song, but as far as I'm concerned, it was our meditation. I don't want to take any more time from Phil, and I never want to take your presence with us for granted, Phil. It's just wonderful to have you here with us today and whenever you can come. And I want to turn the rest of the time over to you.
All right. Anyway, thank you, Esther, for that introduction. And as always, I am so pleased to be with you, my Unity family. I don't really feel we can wrap up in words the wonder of what we're privileged to know and share together when we come together in the Unity principles and teachings. And as always, I pray that I can be a channel that will inspire you to perhaps a deeper, newer insight into how powerful these Unity teachings are if we take them into our lives. Thank you, Esther, by the way, for your wonderful preparation today and introduction. For those of you who were with me on the, oh no, first of all, I want to comment on the rainbow that I bring to you again today. I have my friend Kim McKean with me, and she's good about putting backgrounds on. And I said, let's give us a rainbow again this time, because those people are so hot down there in Sacramento, and they need to know that there's a cool area that's blessed with rainbows and a cool cloudy sky. So hopefully you can feel that as we share today. I gave a lesson on the 4th of July weekend. And that lesson, for those who were able to hear it, really came to me sort of out of the blue. And I thought, you know, this is really true. What I affirmed was that on the 4th of July, we celebrate a fact when a group of Americans decided they were not going to live under the dominance of England, and they were going to set themselves free. And so they put down a declaration of their freedom. And really, as I started to prepare my thoughts for that weekend lesson, I suddenly thought, you know, this is exactly where we are in terms of evolution for all humanity today. We are struggling under the belief that we are only human beings. And the oppression that is upon us is that way of thinking that I am a physical being, that's all I am. When the truth of my being, as we've already affirmed during our time with Esther, we're not physical beings, we are spiritual beings. And this, of course, is the very essence of our Unity work, is to realize that more than anything else, I am a spiritual being. And so I said, we're involved in a war of transforming humanity's thought about this. We're in the very forefront as Unity students of doing this. But it's possible that some will hear that word that, whoa, we got to do battle, as it were, and win out over the thought that we're only humans. How do we do this? How do I personally do this and prove this in my own life? Am I equipped to be a warrior for God in transforming humanity? Today, I want to emphasize for all of us that indeed we are totally equipped to do this, and that we were given this in the Old Testament long before Jesus. We were given the allegorical insight of the truth of our being in terms of the way we function on a moment-by-moment basis in our lives. It was actually given us way back in the Old Testament, and it was encapsulated in the life of Moses. And as I say that, unfortunately, as a sort of scholar, I find myself realizing the latest thing is that a lot of scholars in the world, both religious scholars as non-scholars, say there never was a Moses. And yet, as uni students and true students, we realize it doesn't really matter whether there was a real human called Moses. What matters is that whoever wrote us the Old Testament clearly had insight into what are the principles upon which life is built. And that in the story of Moses, so many of them were given to us very clearly, and they highlight of that which gives you and I the equipment to go forth and change consciousness was Moses reading or meeting with God at the burning bush. When God, or rather Moses, was concerned about the concept of going back and saving the people, how can I be equipped for this? And God affirmed for him his name. He said, God's name. Because Moses said, whose name am I going to go? How am I going to get this done? And God said, I am that I am. I am that I am. And while he was giving us this name in response to the question of who shall I sent me, actually he was giving us the very essence of the thought and the words in which we make our connection to God and that we make our overcoming in our personal lives and how we can help to transform the world into realizing we're not physical beings, we're spiritual beings. I am that I am. Those incredibly important words, which in our metaphysics, we find it very easy to translate. I am in my life that which I say I am. Those are the powerful words, the most powerful words in all of our lives. Who do you say I am? And again, the initial battle thought is, I am not a physical being. I'm a spiritual being. And I say that I am as a spiritual being. I am in dominion of my life, and I'm in dominion of my body. And I speak the words that confirm that to myself, as God spoke them to Moses. We speak them in thought, and we speak them in word. I am that I say I am. And as I say that, I ask you to quickly run through your own mind. What are you saying about yourself? You know, what's your daily concept? And I ask that of myself. And ideally, as we affirm now, we step into the truth, and that is, I am a spiritual being. And I am, therefore, whole and well. I am strong. I am prosperous. I am peaceful. I am all good. And clearly, unity has been at the forefront of this battle, as it were, of transforming consciousness by the work of one woman who had the courage to hear what we're hearing today. And as you all know, I'm speaking as Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement. But Myrtle heard someone say what I've just said, and she went home. She had had a lifetime of tuberculosis, as you probably well heard many times. But it's a fabulous story because what she did, and if we have tried to change major things in our lives by changing our thought and speaking the word, we know it's not easy in the face of physical experience. But Myrtle went home, took that after a lifetime of tuberculosis from the time she was a young person. She began to affirm as a very mature woman, I am God's perfect child. I do not inherit tuberculosis. I am free. And I don't know all of her exact words, but she spoke that truth and spoke it with a conviction of her heart and mind that suddenly, after a lifetime of tuberculosis, she had total freedom. Now, by principle, it's easy for us to say, oh, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work. Isn't that true, folks? Haven't you all just changed instantly like that? If you're like me, you haven't. It's not all that easy. To transform consciousness, friends, no matter what we say about, as Eunice says, life is wonderful, it's just beautiful, no, but it isn't easy in claiming the gift that God has given us. It isn't easy to go into battle. You got to have the equipment. We've got the equipment. That's what we're talking about. It's using our consciousness. We have the capacity to change anything, but we have to put enough conviction and energy into it so that it has time to manifest in this dimension of life we live in. It takes the kind of work that Myrtle did. What an impact she had. I mean, her husband, as we all know, is just a real estate man, businessman. He was so moved by what happened in his own wife's life that he joined her. And of course, together they created this unity, which makes it possible for you and I to affirm this wonderful truth today. I don't want to overemphasize the difficulty of doing what Myrtle did. In any area of your life you want to work on, whether you're working on your prosperity or a physical healing or a human relationship or whatever, I don't want to overemphasize, just say it isn't easy, folks. You have to stay with it. You have to put your energy, you have to put, as we say, your heart into it. Because to think without feeling, which comes from the heart, doesn't give the power and the energy that we need to take into battle, so to speak. So anyway, you and I are blessed to be in this unity consciousness that supports us as we go about doing this. But the world in general, as we know, is way, way behind us. But I have had the privilege of saying, you know, if you look, you'll find there is growing evidence that this truth that we share, that life is consciousness, that is what you think, what you're holding in your thought process, which directs the words you speak as reality, this is gradually coming into our world. And so from time to time, I've given you evidence of that. Today, I want to share with you a book that I have in my library. I've had it for some time, but I read it so long ago, I'd forgotten it, and I pulled it out there, and I thought, oh, this is a classic. And for all of us in our truth work, we should have this in our library. So I'm going to tell you, if you don't have it, what it is, the book that I'm speaking of, and caution you to say, it isn't going to be a kindergarten lesson for you in metaphysics. It requires some very deep thought because there's a lot of science in it. And this is why it's such an important book. This is one of the most, of all the reading I've done, and I've read a lot, no experts in science, metaphysics, or I should say in science contribution metaphysics, but I know enough about it to say this is a classic illustration of a brilliant mind who brings together the very latest in science with some of the basics, not some, with the basic that we're talking about today. So the book I'm talking about, which you better go to the library before you read it. Make sure you want to, because of the challenge it is to understanding the science. But some of it you'll understand very clearly. It's a book by a cardiologist, a Dr. Pim Lamo. He's a Danish physician. And the title of the book is called Consciousness Beyond Life. Consciousness Beyond Life. And he tells the story in it as a cardiologist that the first time he ran into the realization that people don't die a death was, he said, he was working with a patient on the operating room table rather, when suddenly the people in charge of the faculties of the patient said, "We've lost him. We've lost him." And so everybody immediately went to work to try to bring this person back to life because his heart had totally stopped. And they all worked and worked, and lo and behold, they got it going again. And after the surgery was over, they were all standing around and sort of congratulating each other. Wow, we did a job. We brought this man back from death. And he said, when the patient came to, he said, I was totally surprised. He was mad as you know what. And he was mad. He said to me, Dr. Pim Lamo, he said to Dr. Lamo, listen, I was in the most marvelous place in the world and it was so good. And he said, why did you guys bring me back? And as Dr. Lamo said, he was serious, wasn't kidding. He was serious. And he said, that sparked me to the research that I began on the near-death experience. So he tells that story, and then he gives you a number of cases of so-called of people who've gone through near-death experience and come back to life. And then at least half of the book, as I say, deals with quantum physics, the string theory, and all the very latest in science. And he does it so brilliantly that that's what causes me to recommend the book to anybody who likes to read in that area. He does it so wonderfully well to come to the realizations that he focuses on in the end of this book. And that is, are you ready for this? You've never heard this before, probably. Life is consciousness. Basic unity is in this book. At the end, he said, what is very clear is that when you are at a point of, in quotes, dying, he said, you move into the reality of your true self. Because he said, life is consciousness. Now that's a word, you know, as metaphysicians, we've heard over and over, but he's saying this at the end of his scientific conclusions. He's saying, life is consciousness. It says it's not in the body. And he said, at near death, when you go through the near-death experience, all that happens is, for a time, the real you steps out of the body, or the body rejects the real you. But it's right there. You are there. Everybody who dies is there because they never were the body. They are the consciousness that indwells the body. And I love it. I don't know that he specifically said this, but I certainly can, and I think he did infer this, that this is the explanation for why you hear people who, in quotes, have had a near-death experience. They said, well, I was floating up above the table. I could see the doctors all working on me. And the next thing, I was in the hallway out there listening to my relatives always all weeping about me. And of course, as some of you have read near-death things, some of them take trips all around the world there for a while before they're brought back to life again. In quotes, brought back to life again. Of course, they never left life. They never left life. They only surrendered the instrument for what consciousness is. Now, as I say, it's incredible that this book, which is a bestseller book, and by the way, Dr. Lamo no longer practices as a cardiologist. He spends his whole life lecturing to people around the world to help them to realize you are not a body, you are consciousness. You are not a body, you are consciousness. And if this is true, then what you are in consciousness is what you are. But who controls what you are in consciousness? It's by what you choose to think. And I know you've all heard this over, as a longtime sister, you've over and over. You are what you think. So it says to me, Philip Pearson, who is not perfect and has some physical things he's working with at 96. But why do I have to have them? I don't have to have them. As a spiritual being, I can determine what I can have and don't have. Our physical journey may make it more difficult to fulfill that thought, but at the same time, I know that I am, as I choose to be, what I think is real. And so you say, okay, Philip, next time we see you, you're probably 21 and really looking good, girls. Look out. But, you know, it's all built into the evolutionary process. We're not going to go from 100 to 0 overnight, or the other way, 0 to 100 overnight. But in life, as life is meant to be, it is to learn this basic lesson that as true students, we are dedicated to, and which I'm affirming again, that this dear doctor has gone from physical physician's work, surgeon's work, to a scientist, to coming to where we are as true students, which is so wonderful. I am consciousness. That's my real me, and my physical being is going to always be what I believe it to be or could be. So back now to the question, is it easy? I remind you again, I guess I'm saying this to take the weight of failure off our shoulders, to say, it's not that easy. So you don't have to start with saying, I'm tired of being 65. I think I want to be 25 again. I am 25 years old. The odds are you're not going to make it, kids. But if you say at 50, I don't have to expect that. This is a big word. I'm glad it came up. I don't have to expect that I'm going to look worse as the years go by. I have a word that I use quite often, which I'm sure is doing me well, even though it hasn't transformed me. I say probably many times a day, I am forever young. I am forever young. The whole world says you get old. But the principle of truth is that doesn't happen, except in your belief system. And how'd you get that? Well, the world taught you that. When the time you were a little kid, they started talking about, oh, granddad. You know who granddad is. The guy with the old gray hair, and that's granddad. Oh, we all get to be like a granddad. You'll be a granddad someday. And the poor little kid is soaking all this up. Oh, is that true? From the time we're in the cradle, we are taught what the world believes. And it takes strength and courage and all the rest to turn it around. And that's why I never mind looking back to Myrtle and praising her. Fantastic what she did. Just fantastic. But I don't think in her case, she really, definitely none of us do, but she certainly didn't alone. I think Spirit had definite plan to use her life and her consciousness to become what has become the unity movement, which I believe is an important part of the transforming activities taking place in our world. That is winning the battle over the belief that life is merely physical, and realizing that we are these glorious spiritual beings. I got a little time left. So I will affirm again from the standpoint of my friend. Matter of fact, let me just, I got something marked here. This is this cardiologist, physician, brilliant man, says, normally we derive our sense of self from our body. You think about that, you think, somebody says, well, who are you? Probably without even thinking it, you got your mirror image of yourself right away, helping to set your answer to that, who I am. It says, normally we derive our sense of self from our body, our appearance, our family, our history, our nationality, our roles, father, mother, child, grandfather, grandmother, lover, our jobs, our social and financial status, our possession, other people's opinions of us, and so forth. We also derive our identity from our thoughts and feelings, our belief system, our values, our creative and intellectual capacities, our character, and what we call our personality. All this and much more determines our sense of who we are. But who are we? This is the cardiologist asking that, but who are we in essence? Independent of our thought, feelings, and ideas, what shapes our consciousness and what determines how we experience this consciousness? Is consciousness a primary property of the universe, which has always had a non-local presence? Or is it consciousness, or is consciousness the product or consequence of something else? And then I love that he sort of skirted an issue that often comes up for people as they start as scientists or philosophize all this. They said, why and where consciousness originated will probably remain a mystery forever. I say XXX, cross that out. But that's where he's coming from. He said, it will always be a mystery. Consciousness is not visible, not tangible, not perceptible, not measurable, and not verifiable. And yet consciousness is what each living being draws on to give form and meaning to life. Without consciousness, there is no living body. Down to the every last cell, it appearance, every last cell, life appears to be an expression of the will of unconscious aspects of consciousness. And he goes on talking about the wonders of consciousness. So, wrapping up my last contribution to the thought that we are involved in a dramatic change of the evolution of human consciousness. We're in the forefront of the battle, as it were, of doing battle with the thought, I'm just this physical being. We are going to win that battle in each in his own way contributing by a transformation of a life that is at least to the level that others who observe you will say, wow, you're really doing well. I appreciate how you handle this or the way you look, etc. How do you do that? How do you do that? We used to kid one of our ministers, I forget what talk he was giving, but he said, the way he said that when somebody asked out that, and he said, how you do that? How you do that? I mean, how do you stay so happy? How you do that? How come you look the way you look? How you do that? How you do that? One more time. How you do that? Your answer is, you just change your consciousness. Having a bad day? What do you do about a bad day? You know the answer. Change your consciousness. Have a health challenge? What do you do about that? Change your consciousness. Want to have a super day? Super day? Change your consciousness. up to the super level. Why not? Who's limiting us? Why can't we think good? Why can't we think the best is yet to be? Why can't we? We can. And some of us who got involved in that a long time ago together, who watched the best is yet to be, we worked at it. And wonderful thing is, it works that way. I suddenly think of some, I'm sure I've shared this probably a dozen times, but I always felt that I was blessed with the miracle of living with Dorothy Pearson. And I I think over and over again my last day with her, as I've shared with you before, because what was she doing with her time she had on her last day? She woke up when I went in to greet her in the morning. She sang, "Happy am I, I'm rich, I'm happy, happy am." Where she had been bedfast for the last couple of years. But no, I had her up all the time, but I mean, she was not mobile on her own. And but here she is, "Happy am I, I'm rich, I'm happy," because she had really worked her life to be the best is yet to be upbeat and positive. A marvelous example for me. And so over and over, I live our last day together, because whenever I find myself slipping down the slide a little bit, I think, wait a minute, you goofball. No matter what you're facing here, there was Dorothy. I mean, she was gone that very day. She was going and singing, "Happy am I." And you know what? I don't know what was on the other side for her when she let go of her body, but I bet the angels were singing, "Happy am I, I'm rich, I'm happy." So, winding up our thought for today, it is to emphasize again the very basics of the unit taught. Life is consciousness, and you have your being, not because you got a body, but because you are a consciousness, a center of consciousness. And everything physical in your world around you, good and bad, are but a result of what you hold in consciousness. Well, I certainly think this is the red badge of courage that we all have to accept, to be able to say, yeah, that bad thing has happened and I contributed to it. So anyway, shut up, fellows. Time to close here. But I love you folks, and I bless you because you are in the forefront of the battle of transforming humanity. And we are one in that. God bless you all. Have a super day, because the best is yet to be.
Thank you so much, Phil. That was just wonderful. I tried to take some notes so I can be reminded throughout the week. But the nice thing is that these services do get recorded, and we can go back anytime we need to reboot and hear your wonderful words again. But to hear you live is so special. And if any of you want to hear more of Myrtle's story, you can pick it up at church when you come in. That's a wonderful testimony of how she transcended her body and developed her spirit in such a way that she could be happy all the time. And with that in mind, I'm, should I say, required to talk about the offering, but you all know that we love to give. That's what one of the best things I learned at Unity was. There was never any begging or pleading or fundraising. I just love the fact that I heard on my very first visit that we give in love because we love to give. And that's our time, our talent, and our treasure. So as you feel led, I want you to know that your giving does allow us to do this longer than today. So I bless you with that. And our closing song is going to be "Love is the Only Power." And we know that's the answer. Love yourself, love your body, love your mind, love your soul, love all of who you are. Be in love with the God in you and spread your word and shed your light and let the world know that we're aware of the leading edge. We're aware of that. So go ahead and boom that up, Eric.
Be
Now you can all unmute yourself as we say our prayer of protection. Again, you want to join me?
The light of God.
Light of God surrounds
Surrounds us.
The love of
Love
God
God enfolds us.
Enfolds
Holds
us.
us,
The
the
power
power
of God
of God protects us.
protects us,
Where,
The presence of
Amen.
God watches
watches
over us.
over us.
wherever
Wherever we
God
God is,
is, and
all
is
is
well.
well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being here.
Thank
sharing
you,
your life.
Esther. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everybody. Eric.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Stay cool.
Yeah.